A legend has returned.
To the green flag, the Brickyard 400's underway.
And we're not just talking about the track.
They're back, Jimmy Johnson, 3 wide to the inside. Johnson goes around, hard into the wall. Her Bush is there. Allmenard is involved. Others are trying to avoid Jimmy Johnson.
You got to be as tough as a brick to survive here. Around the Track starts now.
It's the third major on NASCAR's schedule, and pretty soon it could punch a ticket for someone into NASCAR's playoffs. Welcome to Around the Track. I'm Carla Gebhardt, Gabe McDonald, and Gabe, only 5 races left, with 2 of them being majors, including this one.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going racing at the famed track in Indianapolis. And to help us get ready, we've got the driver of the number 51 Ford Dark Horse Mustang for Brickyard Racing, Justin Haley, in Garage Confidential this week. Plus, NASCAR pit reporter Alan Cavana is back in the building to break down the race. But first, we got to get to know a familiar face because we're back at the Oval.
That's right. I want everybody to say hello, old friend, because after a 3-year run on Indy's road course, we are back to its natural NASCAR habitat on the Oval, and this is one that every driver wants on their resume. The Brickyard 400 is considered one of the sport's crown jewel races. Now, why is that? Well, Indy is the 3rd oldest track in the world, so lots of prestige here, and this is also the last race before the Olympic break, so the drivers know they've got to get good results here, or else the next 2 weeks off are really just going to be the worst vacation ever.
Everyone looks at Indy as, one of the biggest races of the year. It's a crown jewel event, and we said, because of the history and how special it is to be here. We all know that. I've always enjoyed running the Oval. A lot of drivers haven't ran the Oval before, because it's been so long since we've done it. So I'm excited to get back on the big track, looking at turn 1 and saying, "Oh my God, I'm going so fast."
Being on the Oval is always historic, and so I feel like a lot of the drivers and everybody is more excited about that.
Every race car driver in the world dreams of getting to race in Indianapolis, and it's always special to every single race car driver. But when you grow up in Indiana, it's just different.
That is the one we have circled. We don't even talk about it in our camp. That is a huge one for RP, and it is full speed ahead for Indy.
So let's do Indy by the numbers. We're going 160 laps over 400 miles on a 2.5-mile track. 4 drivers have won all 4 of NASCAR's crown jewel races, but there's one in the field that can join them on race day. Yes, James Dennis Hamlin. We're talking about Denny. Hamlin is in the starting lineup with 3 drivers who have already won here: Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, and the Hall of Famer Jimmy Johnson. And even if you win the pole, it doesn't necessarily mean you're set. Only 5 drivers who have started P1 have gone on to kiss those bricks.
Well, now it's time to go trackside up in Indianapolis at the Brickyard with none other than Chris Hagan. Chris, appreciate you joining us this weekend. Of course, we got a big race coming up with NASCAR going back to, obviously, the Oval from the road course. What's that transition going to be like, and just how excited are the fans and also the drivers for making the switch back to the Oval after 3 years on the road course?
Well, Gabe, this is the way it should be. 30 years ago when NASCAR first came here to IMS, there was a lot of controversy. Some of the Indy 500 fans, they didn't want to see stock cars on this famed Oval, but that's the way it was back in 1994, and that's the way it should be on the 30th anniversary. The drivers are excited, the fans certainly excited, and it's showing up in the ticket window.
And you mentioned a lot of drivers being excited, but there are also some drivers that have a bit of an advantage in this race. Of course, you have 7-time champion Hall of Famer Jimmy Johnson, 4 wins on the Oval. You have a guy like Joey Logano, 7 top 10s in the last 8 races. Brad Keselowski has a win. Kyle Larson was in the Indy 500 this year. For these drivers, just how much of an advantage are they going to have just having that experience here at IMS?
Well, usually it's a power team and a top-notch driver that wins here because it's so difficult to pass the way this track is set up. It's for the IndyCar, not for NASCAR. So you have to qualify well, and you have to do everything down to a T.
And one of the most iconic images in all of motorsports is obviously the legend kissing the bricks. Just how is that tradition come about, and what is that like being able to experience that in person for maybe somebody that hasn't been able to see that in person yet?
You would think that kissing the bricks went, really far back to 1911 or something when the Indy 500 first started, but that is not the case. Everybody who wins here kisses the bricks, but it was actually a NASCAR driver, Dale Jarrett, and his team when they won here in 1996. They were the first ones to go kiss the bricks, and now it's become part of the pageantry, part of the tradition of winning here in any racing series. You celebrate, you burn out, and you head right down there to the yard of bricks, pucker up and kiss them because you've done something very special in the world of racing.
Sure to be a special weekend up there at IMS. Chris Hagan holding it down for us. Appreciate your time. Enjoy the weekend, my friend. Now we have an elite rotation of analysts and friends from the NASCAR world who come in every week, and of course this one is no different.
That's right. NASCAR pit reporter Alan Cavanna joining us once again. The Olympic break is coming up, so we kind of figured you'd be in Paris, but we appreciate you taking the time to help us preview this Indy race.
I'm busy kissing the bricks. I've done that. I've done that as a fan, as
Really?
a youngster. I went, of course. Indy is the most famous racetrack in the world. For any race fan, for any driver, to have been there, to be there, you got to kiss the bricks.
Now, after, of course, 3 runs on the road course, we're finally back at the Oval. Many drivers saying they grew up wanting to race at this track. What makes the Brickyard so special with this being one of the sport's crown jewels?
It's just so, the history there, it has so much history. It's one of the oldest tracks in the world, but it's also the most famous racetrack in the world. Think of the names that have won there, the A.J. Foyts, the Mario Andretti's of the world. Then they brought it to NASCAR. As a kid, when they went to the Brickyard for the first time on the Oval, it was the biggest race in NASCAR history. And you just think about the people who have won there, some of the biggest names in NASCAR history, the Jeff Gordons of the world, Jimmy Johnson, Dale Jarrett, Dale Earnhardt. You can name them all. And if you haven't won there, it is a huge disappointment because it is one of those crown jewels. There's just so much history. You have to kiss the bricks.
This track demands your respect as a driver, so we know it's going to be challenging, but it's also really challenging for the pit crew members, right? One of the narrowest pit roads and one of the longest too. Pit road speed is going to be down to 45 miles per hour this week, so the pressure is really going to be on to stay mistake-free, right?
On every facet, right? The driver, the teams, everybody. It is astonishing how skinny this track is. We thought we saw Pocono last week where we saw them 5, 7 wide, right? No, this track, if you go more than 3 wide, you get scared. And pit road is even worse. It's about 2 lanes. You see them driving down there. It is such, there's so little room for mistake at a track like this. And then you factor in the slow pit road speed. We've seen drivers before in the lead dominate this race, then have a speeding penalty. It costs them everything. You have to be on top of it. The pit crew has to be on top of it as well.
At Pocono, that happened.
Absolutely. It can happen to the drivers. It can happen to the crews. These wins matter so much. And then you factor in the fact that it's a major, the fact that it's the Brickyard, pressure.
You mentioned wins as well. I mean, there are some drivers who are on that playoff bubble needing a win, but of course they got a little bit of help last week with a repeat winner, Ryan Blaney getting it done. Of course, so the bubble didn't really shrink. And you got to talk about Bubba Wallace, right? They're on the bubble, so he actually got a little bit of help. So let's look at the playoff bubble real quick because you have Martin Truex Jr. He might not have a lock into the playoffs with a win just yet, but he is 137 points above the cut line. But here's where it gets dicey. Ty Gibbs is 67 points clear and seems safe, but it's Chris Buescher and Ross Chastain in the 15th and 16th spots. They have 44 and 27 points more respectively than Bubba Wallace, who is now on the outside looking in. But that number, it can be made up in just one race. But Bubba did make up some big ground last week in Pocono. He's now 27 points outside of the playoffs. Chase Briscoe didn't really do himself any favors. He's 75 points outside of making the postseason. Now, despite Kyle Busch getting wrecked by the 7 on Sunday, he did gain a few points in the race. He's 102 points out and will most likely need a win in the last 5 races if he wants a chance at another Cup Series title and to keep that streak going of at least 1 win in every full-time season as a driver. So when you look at the bubble here, who are some guys that you see being able to make up a lot of ground this weekend at Indy?
It looks daunting. And you mentioned Bubba Wallace, minus 27, but he was about double that out at Pocono, right? And after 1 race, that lead got cut in half for Ross Chastain because Ross had a bad day, Bubba had a good day. So you see how quickly these things can change. But you mentioned Kyle Busch, the only one on that list that has sniffed victory lane at the Brickyard before. Kyle Busch is having the worst season of his career, the worst stretch of luck, the worst summer Kyle Busch has ever had. He has to come back and do something. I don't know if that car has the speed, but they still have Kyle Busch. I have to believe in that. Whether it's strategy, whether it's luck, you still have Kyle Busch behind the wheel. He's the one that has to jump up there and do it because at 102 points out, I don't know if there's enough time for him to point his way in. I think Bubba can. You saw it in 1 race, cut that in half. But 102 points out for Kyle Busch, go get that victory.
The pressure is on also. With the Olympic break, you got to sit on your results for 2 weeks after that before those races, before the playoffs. So NASCAR pit reporter Alan Cavanna, you're going to stick around for a little bit more, but we've got a little bit more to get to, including a Cup driver who's surprising a lot of people right now.
We expected to run good, but not week in and week out like we are.
The move to Rick Ware Racing may have been questioned by a lot of people, but it never was for Justin Haley. We sit down with the driver next in Garage Confidential.
And Daniel Suarez already works for Mr. Worldwide Pitbull, but now the driver of the 99 is taking the moniker for himself with his latest adventure. Details on what the Trackhouse driver is doing over the Olympic break is coming up next. And we have big news from Pit Road when we do come back in just a few weeks after the Olympics.
That's right. The power is in the crew chief's hands when it hits the short track at Richmond. We got more around the track next.
Back on Around the Track, NASCAR is going international yet again. Daniel Suarez announcing that he's competing in the NASCAR Brazil tournament at Interlagos. The driver of the 99 for Trackhouse Racing will bring a Chevy Camaro to the Autodromo during NASCAR's Olympic break. This race, it'll mean a little bit more to the Suarez family. While Daniel is from Mexico, his fiancée and her family are from Brazil. In fact, the race is just 4 days after they get married. Suarez says this is just the next step in NASCAR's international development.
I'm just very competitive and I'm always looking for the limits. And I love to, even though I never been into Lagos to compete, I've been into Lagos, but never to compete. I've never been in these cars before. I would love to go out there and fight for the win, That's why I'm going to do this.
And NASCAR says it does plan on more international expansion. Sources tell us we should expect to see a cup stop in both Mexico and Canada within the next 2 seasons. Carla?
Thanks, Gabe. Yeah, 2 top 10 finishes may not seem like a lot, but when Justin Haley announced he was switching from colleague racing to Rick Ware racing, it shocked a lot of people within the industry. But now, with those results, it's really more than most thought was possible. Justin Haley and I went one-on-one to talk about it in this week's Garage Confidential. Okay, so every time I've heard your name in Rick Ware Racing this season, it has been just shock with what you've been able to do with this race team in your first year. I know a lot of people probably questioned you early on when you made that switch. How good does it kind of feel at this point with where you're at in your career and this season to kind of prove everybody wrong that was making all of those assumptions or question marks about that move?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it's been rewarding for sure. I mean, there's a lot of work still to be done, but I kind of took a leap of faith and, switched from a different team and a different manufacturer and put my career and livelihood and everything on the line. And, it's rewarding and humbling to have it pay off.
What was it about in the early conversations with Rick Ware Racing that you were able to maybe kind of build some of that trust to know that this was going to be the next step for you?
Yeah, I mean, just from the first conversation I had with Rick and Robbie Benton and Tommy Baldwin and everyone at RWR, they just believed in me, and I think that's big for a young race car driver like myself, is to have, a good stable of people that believe in you and want to be behind you and, take you to the next level and invest in you and really, kind of show that you're their guy. So, that was kind of what convinced me early on and to, take that leap of faith, right? It was a big leap. I think a lot of people were surprised by it, but then again, looking back on it, I would have done it over and over again.
How would you summarize this season so far? I mean, we're seeing you more when the races are being broadcast on television. We're noticing more top 10s and just a lot of great finishes from you. But how do you view this season?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely could be better, but that's expected, right? It's kind of our first season. We're, trying to get everything in line, trying to take the team from where it was to being where it was. And I think it's, I can say with confidence, it's surprised everyone that we've ran as good as we have so early, even ourselves, right? We expected to run good, but not week in and week out like we are. So, we just have really fast race cars. Everyone at Ford Performance, RFK, RWR has been awesome to me. And, it's scary to jump ship and go to a new manufacturer and a whole new set of people and teams and things like that. So, I think we'd like to be a little bit better in points. We've had some, some issues with the DQ at COTA. Got disqualified there, and then we've had some parts failures that weren't in our control that are a few last place finishes. But I think if you put those races behind us and the races we do, focus on and that we do finish well in, I think it's been a great season.
Do you feel like you've been able to prove your worth, your talent a little bit more?
Yeah, you hope. All of us race car drivers think we're, the best in the world. I'm not saying I think that, but
sure
you have to an extent, I guess, to be confident to do it. And, definitely I feel like I've, regained confidence in myself that I deserve to be in the Cup Series and deserve to race with these guys that are the best in the world. So, It's definitely been, again, humbling for me and rewarding, and I'm thankful that, Rick and Lisa Ware gave me this opportunity to keep myself in the Cup Series, and looking back on it, it's just been a huge blessing.
NASCAR is going to go back to the Brickyard 400. Are you excited about this race? Are you as excited as the other drivers that it's going back to the oval?
Yeah, for sure, and especially since it's my home race, which is makes it more meaningful. So, how could you not want to, it's like the Daytona 500, right? You have the Daytona 500, you have the Brickyard, just the name of the race goes so far. So, I'm excited. I'm obviously from, not from Indy, but I'm from Indiana, just 2 hours north. So, it's going to be cool for me to race on the Brickyard and hopefully have a good result.
Thanks to Justin Haley for his time. Well, what's life like when your boss is one of the greatest drivers of all time? For Sam Mayer and Sammy Smith, it's never a dull moment. We check in on the Xfinity Series with Junior Motorsports next on Around the Track. The evolution of the NASCAR Cup Series continues to change. Teams are yet again getting an option on what kind of tires they get to use. On August 11th at Richmond, teams will have two options, the normal Prime tire and the option tire. And here are the differences there. The Prime tire has the yellow font. It lasts longer but has less grip with a harder compound. The red type tire is the option tire. It's softer, has more grip, but doesn't last as long as the Prime. And since Richmond is a short track where drivers will also have that white tire, the wet weather option. And competition director Elton Sawyer says they like what they saw when they gave drivers options at the All-Star race, and now is the right time to try it in a points-paying event.
We want to get this right. So this is exciting. I mean, this is really cool that we're going to be able to do this at Richmond. I don't know that we've ever had two different compounds in a point-paying race at the Cup level. We've had two different manufacturers, but with the same manufacturer being Goodyear and two different options, it's exciting. The teams are looking forward to it, and the good thing about this one versus what we did at the All-Star race is we're going to give them the option once the race starts. It's in their hands, and they can manage it accordingly.
All right, talking the Xfinity Series now, and at that level, there are a few teams that are always in the hunt for a title, one of which, Junior Motorsports, which means for Sam Mayer, Justin Allgaier, Sammy Smith, and Brandon Jones, your boss is Dale Earnhardt Jr. As the Xfinity Series season winds down and starts to prepare to air on the CW network, we asked Sammy Smith and Sam Mayer what it's like when you don't only drive for the NASCAR Hall of Famer, but once a year, he's your teammate and your rival.
Yeah, like having him as owner Dale, and it used to be broadcast Dale, and now you have like teammate Dale. So you get three different kinds of Dales, and you don't really know which one you're going to get when you walk into the meeting. But he's always super fun to converse with, whether it's about competition or anything else. Having him as a teammate, and we actually share a hauler when he does that one-off race because we don't have more than 4 haulers. So having him in my hauler and being able to have him right there and talk to him before the race and kind of see what he thinks and pick his brain a little bit, even though he gets a little wound up every now and then. Like Bristol last year, he was like, I'm not going to qualify. And I'm like, Dale, yes, you are. You're Dale Jr. You're going to figure it out. And he went out there and beat all 4 of us pretty much and almost won the race.
All right, Alan, real quick, obviously, when you're driving for a Hall of Famer, there has to be immense pressure. And this team really has had a rough 2024 season so far. What do they have to do to be able to improve here on the back half of the season before the playoffs?
They got to get the results. Look, they have the best team, they have the best equipment, the best sponsorships, the best owner, right? And they have one driver in the top 10, 1 out of the 4. You got to do better than that. They set their own standard there. It's championships, not just wins. They're not cutting it right now.
We'll see if they can get it done, hopefully sometime soon. But, Carla, we got to finish up this race and obviously make our picks soon.
That's right. Thanks, guys. The Rainbow Warrior, Jeff Gordon, was the first driver in NASCAR to win at this historical track. But who's going to kiss the bricks this year? Vegas odds and our picks are next in Victory Lane Locks. So who's going to kiss the bricks in Indy? Here's the sportsbook favorites odds courtesy of DraftKings. Denny Hamlin appears to be the top dog so far. He has 4-1 odds. Behind him is Kyle Larson at 6-1. Ryan Blaney and Brad Keselowski are both 15-2, with Chase Elliott rounding out the top 5 with 9-1 odds. And let's go ahead and get right into our Victory Lane Locks. Alan, You're going with someone that we have both picked at nauseam this year, but you haven't picked him yet this season.
For good reason. Denny Hamlin. Look, he's got to get it done. It's the only crown jewel he has not won, and he's been waiting for years. Before this, when we were still on this oval, remember how good he was, how close he came. Top three finishes at the Brickyard, never the brick itself. This time he finally gets it. I think it's the most important race for him.
Hey, well, there's something about that 24 car at Indy. Give me William Byron, who's been knocking on the door here in the last few weeks for yet another win. Already has 3 this year, coming off another top 5 finish. 4th in the 2019 Brickyard 400. And of course, we all know about the success of the 24 car at IMS. Give me 24 William Byron to get it done.
All right, I feel like I may regret not going with the Joe Gibbs driver, but I've heard all week that if you ran well at Pocono, you probably are going to run well at Indy. Chase Elliott was on a different strategy last week, had a speeding penalty, but he had a pretty dominant car, drove back up through the field, just a really fast car, so I like his odds this week.
Plus 900 if you're Vegas into that stuff. Woo, good number.
I know, that'll do it for us this week. Enjoy the race at Indy.